She screamed, but no one answered. She bled, but no hands came to lift her. And when her newborn cried once, just once, the silence that followed tore the world in half. In the middle of a war-torn village, with blood still staining her dress, Ijeoma, barely alive, was handed a shovel, but she dropped it because no mother should dig her own child's grave. With trembling fingers, she carved into the earth with nothing but her bare hands. Not to let go, but to hold on to something no one else could see. This is not just a story of loss. It's a story of defiance, of love beyond death, of a woman who buried a baby and planted a legacy. The winds whispered through the cracked walls of the old clay house. A woman named Ijeoma sat on the cold mud floor, legs folded, her hands cradling a swollen belly. Her 9th month had come, but the village midwife had not. Outside, thunder rolled, a cruel mimicry of the storm that raged in her soul. Her husband, gone to war. Her mother lost a fever. And now she waited alone for a child who kicked like he already knew the world might reject him. Then, without warning, a sharp pain twisted her inside out. Her time had come. Ijeoma screamed, calling for help, but the storm had swallowed the village. No one came. Her voice cracked, echoing in an empty night. She clawed the dirt floor, sweat mixing with tears, pain tearing through her spine. She bit into the corner of her wrapper just to silence herself, if only to stop hearing the sound of her own hopelessness. In that moment, she realized she would bring this child into the world alone. Her hands, trembling and calloused, became the midwife, and in one final push, soaked in agony and blood, her baby was born. For a moment, there was silence. Then she looked down. The baby wasn't crying. His chest rose faintly, then dropped and stayed still. Panic seized her heart. She rubbed his back, tapped his feet, whispered every prayer her mother once taught her. Nothing. Please, please cry, she begged, rocking him gently. But the only answer was the rain hammering the rooftop, like a warning from the gods. She pressed him to her chest. He was still warm, still perfect, but lifeless. Her scream this time wasn't for help. It was for forgiveness, to herself, to the sky, to a world that never gave him a chance. By morning, the storm had passed, but the storm within the village was only beginning. When the women came, their eyes did not soften. A curse, the elder spat. You birthed death into our soil. They refused to touch the child, refused to dig a grave. It is your shame. You bury it. Ijeoma clutched her lifeless son, numb. But he was mine, she whispered. He never even saw the sun. The elder women turned their backs, walking away as if grief was a sickness that could be caught. Left alone again, Ijeoma did the only thing she could. She began to dig. The ground was dry, cracked from heat, resisting her every move. She scraped it with her fingers, nails breaking, blood staining the soil. She didn't cry. Her tears had dried somewhere between labor and the last heartbeat. The baby lay beside her, wrapped in the same cloth that caught his first breath and his last. Her hands, once soft and loving, turned into tools of burial. Each handful of dirt whispered goodbyes she couldn't say aloud. Birds watched from the trees, silent witnesses to a mother burying hope with her bare hands. She didn't bury a child. She buried her heart. The earth refused to open wide enough. Her hands were swollen, flesh torn from stone and root. She dug until her arms trembled, until her vision blurred from exhaustion. But the hole was still too small. She pressed her lips to her baby's forehead, the skin already cooling. "Forgive me, my son," she whispered. "The world was too cruel for you, and I was too alone." She placed him in the shallow grave, unable to cover him fully. Each handful of dirt felt like a betrayal. The wind picked up again, as if the sky mourned with her or protested her act. Just as she placed the final handful of soil, thunder cracked again, and the rain returned with fury. It was as if the heavens couldn't bear what had just happened. The earth turned soft, swallowing the grave in muddy silence. Ijeoma remained on her knees, soaked again, her dress clinging to her skin. She stared at the ground, not moving, not blinking. The grave began to flood, water seeping into the soil, threatening to expose what she had just buried. She screamed, not in fear, but rage, at God, at fate, at the sky that watched her suffer and still stayed silent. In the days that followed, no one mentioned the child again. The women whispered. The men looked away. Children stared and were pulled quickly by their mothers. Ijeoma walked like a ghost, moving through the village with hollow eyes. The pain was no longer loud. It was quiet, sitting beneath her skin like a stone. The elders told others not to drink from her clay pots, not to sit where she sat today. "She carries death," they said. But she carried love. Love that had no name, no future, only memory, only silence, only a tiny grave no one else would visit. At night, her dreams took her back to that moment. The final breath, the shallow grave, the rain, over and over. Sometimes she saw him older, smiling, running barefoot. Other times she heard his cry in the wind, only to wake to silence. Sleep became punishment. She began marking the days by how many dreams she could survive. One night, she lit a candle and whispered his name into the flame. "Chimneries," she said, "my gift from God." The flame flickered violently, then stilled. It was the first time she had said his name out loud, and it broke her. Weeks passed. Then one morning, a stranger arrived in the village, a man with tired eyes and dust-covered sandals. He was a healer passing through. He looked at Ijeoma, not with fear, not with pity, but with knowing. "You've buried something precious," he said quietly. She didn't answer. "But you're still here." She turned to walk away, but he continued. "Some mothers carry graves in their arms, but still rise." That night, she sat by her son's grave and cried, not just for him, but for herself, for the part of her that died and the part that refused to. The village held a festival to mark the season's end. Drums thundered, children danced, fires crackled, but not for her. Ijeoma watched from the shadows, clutching her arms tightly across her chest. For the first time in months, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply observed. And then something strange happened. The drums stopped, all at once, like a breath being held. And for a fleeting moment, everyone turned, every single face, to look at her. Eyes not of judgment, but recognition. A silence full of questions, and perhaps understanding. Then the drums resumed, but she had already turned away. Before dawn, Ijeoma walked to the sacred river with a woven basket in her hands. Inside, a single flower, a carved wooden toy, and a lock of her own hair. She knelt at the edge, dipped the basket in the water, and whispered, "Take this to my son. Let him know I remember." The current accepted her gift without resistance. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was drowning. The river didn't speak back. It simply moved forward. And for the first time since the burial, so did she, one slow, trembling step at a time. Later that week, another woman in the village gave birth, a healthy baby boy. The cries of new life echoed through the village, piercing Ijeoma's chest like a blade. She stood behind a tree, watching the midwife carry the child into the sunlight. The baby kicked, wailed, and reached out as if grasping for the world. Her hands twitched, aching to hold him, but she didn't move. She knew better now. Some arms are no longer meant to cradle. She turned away, slowly, but the sound of the baby's first laugh followed her like a ghost. The healer stayed longer than anyone expected. One day, he approached Ijeoma again, this time carrying a worn satchel. "I had a son, too," he said quietly, sitting beside her on the earth. "He died in the war. I buried him beside a battlefield, with nothing but a leaf to cover his face." They didn't speak after that, just sat there, two broken souls, leaning on silence. Grief had its own language, one not spoken but deeply understood. That day, Ijeoma learned she wasn't alone, and somehow that truth was more healing than any medicine. Seasons passed. Rain came and went. Grass returned. And slowly, something began to grow from the soil, right where the tiny grave had been. A tree, small at first, then strong. No one planted it. No one watered it. Yet it flourished. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was sacred. Ijeoma said nothing. She would sit beneath it in silence, her back against its bark, her face lifted to the sky. She began to hum lullabies, one she never got to sing. And in those quiet hours, beneath that tree, her baby lived again. Whispers in the village changed tone. They were no longer filled with fear or superstition, but wonder. Some said Ijeoma spoke to the tree and it listened. Others said they saw birds perch on its branches and sing only when she sat beneath it. A child once approached her, curious, unafraid, and asked, "Why do you always smile at the sky?" She looked down and replied, "Because it's the only place I know he still sees me." That day, a small woven bracelet was left at the base of the tree, not by her, but by someone who finally understood. Late one evening, as the moon rose full and heavy, Ijeoma sang, not the lullaby she had hummed, but a new song, one born from pain and stitched with love. It told of mothers who buried dreams, of hands that bled not from labor, but from grief. Villagers paused outside their huts, listening. Some wept, others bowed their heads. It was not a song for celebration. It was a song for remembering. Her voice cracked at the final note, but she smiled. "Tonight," she whispered to the stars, "I finally sang to him. He hears me now." There was a time when every breath she took came with the question, "Why me? Why did no one help? Why didn't she scream louder? Why did the world stay silent as she broke?" But with time, the questions faded, not because answers came, but because they no longer mattered. Pain didn't disappear. It simply learned to walk beside her. She no longer searched the sky for signs, nor the soil for comfort. She simply existed, quiet, firm, present, and that was enough, because in a world that tried to erase her, she remained. The villagers gasped when the tree bore fruit, sweet, red, and unlike anything they had tasted. No one knew its name. Elders claimed it was a spirit's gift. Ijeoma picked one, held it in her hand, then sat beneath the branches. She took a bite and wept, not because of the taste, but because something inside her shifted. Her baby would never eat, never grow, never speak, but this tree did all those things. It became what he could not. And somehow, that made her pain less bitter. Not gone, just gentler. One day, a trembling young woman approached Ijeoma, her belly round, fear in her eyes. "I heard what they did to you," she said. "I'm scared. I'm next." Ijeoma stood slowly and placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "You're not alone," she said softly. That evening, she stayed by the girl's side, held her hand through labor, sang to the child when he came. And when the baby cried his first cry, Ijeoma did not flinch. She smiled. That night, the tree rustled, even without wind. Something had shifted. Life had returned. Through her, in a cloth-bound journal tucked beneath her bed mat, Ijeoma had written a letter, never meant to be delivered. It began with the words, "My son, I carried you in silence, and I buried you in pain." Page after page, she poured her soul into the paper. She wrote about the soil under her nails, the sound of his last breath, the rage she swallowed, and the guilt she carried. One day, after years, she took the letter to the river and let the water take it. It was not for the world. It was for her release. There was one woman in the village, older and bitter, who had once accused Ijeoma of cursing her family. That woman came forward, sick and bent by time, eyes hollow with regret. "I believed the lies," she said. "I looked away when I should have helped." Ijeoma didn't speak. She simply looked at her, long enough for the woman to lower her eyes. Forgiveness wasn't spoken. It wasn't even expected. But when Ijeoma offered her water from the tree's bowl, the woman drank. And that was enough. Some healings are silent. Years had passed. The tree was taller now, its roots thick and deep. One morning, rain returned to the village after a long drought. As the drops fell, children laughed and danced. Ijeoma, now older, walked barefoot to the grave, now covered in wildflowers and shaded by the great tree. She stood beneath the rain and let it wash over her. This was the first time it had rained since the day she buried him. The sky cried with her again, not in sorrow this time, but in remembrance. And that, too, was healing. The villagers began to come to her, not with gifts, but with grief. A father mourning a lost son, a woman mourning a stillborn, children who had buried siblings. Ijeoma listened. She didn't offer advice or magic, just silence, touch, and presence. She became the unspoken keeper of sorrow, the quiet midwife of grief. And for the first time, the village became a place where pain was not hidden, but honored, where mourning wasn't shameful, but sacred, all because one woman refused to stay buried. On a rare night, stars fell from the sky, shooting across the heavens like trails of fire. Villagers ran out to marvel, but Ijeoma sat alone beneath the tree, her eyes steady on the sky. "If you can see this," she whispered, "then you know I made it." That night, she saw her baby, not in form, not in flesh, but in a memory so vivid it made her chest ache. She did not weep. She smiled. She had lived through the unthinkable, and yet she remained, strong, rooted, like the tree above him. There had never been a naming ceremony. No drums, no blessings, no whispers of a future. Her child had gone unnamed, stolen before identity, before legacy. But that day, under the rising sun, Ijeoma spoke one name aloud, Obinna, father's heart. It echoed through the air like a sacred call. She carved it into the tree's bark with her own hands. "You may not walk this earth," she said, "but your name will." From that moment, the tree became more than a memory. It became a monument. One day, men from the city came, papers in hand, eyes filled with ambition. They pointed at the land, spoke of roads, factories, and development. But Ijeoma stood before them and said, "This tree holds more history than your cities." When they laughed, she handed them the story, written, bound, soaked in memory. A journalist later wrote an article titled, "The Woman Who Made a Tree Sacred." And just like that, her pain became her power. The land remained untouched, not because she begged, but because she made them feel. In her final days, Ijeoma walked slower, spoke softer, but her presence was louder than ever. One morning, they found her seated beneath the tree, eyes closed, smile on her face. She had passed in peace, not with sorrow, but with stillness. In her lap lay a fruit, untouched, and beside her, a letter with just 6 words. He was never really gone anyway. The villagers wept, but not just in grief. They wept because they had seen a woman endure the impossible and rise. Years later, people came from far away to see the tree. Some came with babies wrapped in cloth. Others came with sorrow wrapped in silence. They sat beneath its shade, whispered names of the wind, and left offerings of bracelets, fruit, or song. The villagers kept the place sacred. No machines, no roads, only stories. Mothers called it the mother's tree. Children played beneath it, and some said, when the wind was right, they could hear her singing still. And so the story lived, not in books alone, but in hearts. It was told in whispers and lullabies, in quiet moments between mother and child, not as a tale of tragedy, but of triumph, of what it means to survive the worst day of your life and still rise every day after. Ijeoma became more than a mother. She became a legacy, a root, a branch, a seed. She was forced to bury her baby with her bare hands. But in doing so, she planted a story that will never be forgotten. If this story stirred something in your heart, if you pause at any moment to breathe deeper, to hold back a tear, or to whisper, "Ijeoma, you were strong," then this story has done its work. But its journey doesn't end here. Stories like these deserve to be heard by many, by the silent, the grieving, the strong ones hiding their pain behind quiet smiles. So if you believe in the power of untold stories, subscribe to this channel right now, so you never miss a voice that needs to be heard. Turn on the notification bell, because the next story might be the one your soul has been waiting for. Like this video, if Ijeoma's strength moved you, comment below what part of her journey stayed with you. Share this story with someone who needs healing, strength, or simply the courage to carry on. Together, we keep these stories alive. Together, we become the voice for those who are silenced. This is an Echoes Africa Stories, and this is just the beginning.